I never thought I'd be the woman who threw away a good man because he didn't fit my narrow definition of masculinity. Yet here I am, 34 years old, sitting alone in my perfectly decorated suburban living room, wondering how everything fell apart so spectacularly. The worst part? I can't even blame anyone but myself. My name is Claire Davidson, and this is the story of how I lost a diamond while chasing glitter. Why do you always have to check with me before making a decision? Just be a man and handle it yourself for once, I snapped, slamming my coffee mug onto the kitchen counter. Eli flinched, actually flinched, like my words had physically struck him. His shoulders hunched forward slightly, a gesture so familiar I could predict it before it happened. 3 years of marriage, and this dance was becoming unbearable. I just thought you might have a preference about the backsplash tile, he said quietly. It's going to be in our kitchen for years. I wanted us both to be happy with it. It's tile, Eli. Boring, basic tile. Make a decision without creating a committee meeting about it. I watched his face do that thing it always did, a quick flash of hurt followed by careful neutrality. Eli never fought back, never raised his voice, never slammed doors or threw things, or did any of the dramatic things that proved someone was passionate. He just absorbed, calculated, adjusted. In retrospect, that moment in our kitchen was merely the dress rehearsal for the catastrophe I would unleash 3 weeks later. I met Elijah Chen 6 years ago at my college roommate's wedding. He wasn't supposed to be my type at all. I'd always gone for the dominant personalities, the Alexander who captained the rowing team and told me exactly where we'd be going for dinner, the Vincent who played bass in a band and made decisions with unwavering confidence even when they were terrible, the Sebastian who blazed through life making enemies and allies with equal enthusiasm. They were exciting, they were masculine, they were exhausting. By 28, I was worn out from emotional whiplash. My last relationship with Ryan, a charismatic contractor with biceps like steel cables and the loyalty of a cat, in a room full of laser pointers, had ended with me finding texts from 3 different women on his phone. When I confronted him, he'd shrugged and said, "That's just how men are, babe. We're not built for monogamy." When Vivian seated me next to Eli at her reception, I barely gave him a second glance. He was attractive enough, tall with warm brown eyes and a gentle smile, but he lacked that commanding presence I'd been conditioned to look for. "I'm Eli," he said, offering his hand. "I work with Ben in urban planning. You must be Claire? Vivian's told me so many nice things about you." His handshake was firm, but not aggressive. His voice was pleasant, but not loud. Everything about him was moderate, balanced, safe. I was prepared to endure an evening of awkward small talk, but something unexpected happened. Eli was genuinely interesting. He listened, not that half-listening men often do while scanning the room for someone more important, but truly listened, asking thoughtful follow-up questions about my work in graphic design. When the server brought out a dish I was allergic to, Eli quietly arranged for an alternative without making a scene. When an elderly guest seemed overwhelmed by the noise, he found her a quieter spot and made sure she was comfortable. He danced with both his mother and Vivian's grandmother, treating them with the same attentiveness he'd shown me. None of it was flashy, but all of it was noticed. By the end of the night, I found myself giving him my number, not because he demanded it or played some game to get it, but because I genuinely wanted to talk to him again. Our courtship was refreshing. He planned thoughtful dates based on things I'd mentioned liking, rather than just taking me to expensive restaurants to impress me. He remembered small details, how I took my coffee, which authors I loved, the name of my childhood cat. He introduced me to his friends early on, not as a trophy, but as someone whose opinions he valued. After the chaos of my previous relationships, Eli's stability felt like stepping into a peaceful garden after years of living beside a highway. I could breathe around him. I could be myself. When he proposed after 2 years of dating, I said yes without hesitation. It felt like the mature choice, the right choice, the safe choice. The wedding was beautiful, modest but elegant, just like Eli. When he proposed after 2 years of dating, I said yes without hesitation. It felt like the mature choice, the right choice, the safe choice. The wedding was beautiful, modest, but elegant, just like Eli. He cried when I walked down the aisle, and instead of feeling embarrassed by his open emotion as I might have once been, I found it endearing. My father pulled me aside at the reception to tell me I'd found a good man, the kind who would still be holding my hand 50 years later. I believed him. I really did. The transition into marriage was seamless at first. Eli and I moved into a charming craftsman-style home in a good school district. He continued his steady rise at the urban planning firm, while I freelanced as a graphic designer from our converted sunroom office. We adopted a rescue dog named Penny, who adored Eli beyond reason. We had dinner with friends, planned for retirement, and generally lived the kind of stable, comfortable life I'd convinced myself I wanted. I'm not sure when things changed, or rather, when I changed. Maybe it was the class reunion where I ran into Sebastian, now divorced but still magnetic, still unapologetically himself. Maybe it was when Vivian's husband got that spontaneous promotion that came with a company car and sudden status. Maybe it was simply boredom, that insidious poison that can dissolve even the strongest foundations. Whatever the catalyst, I began noticing things about Eli that had once seemed endearing, but now grated on my nerves. His careful consideration before making decisions, his preference for planning rather than spontaneity, his gentle approach to disagreements rather than passionate debates. "Do you want Thai or Italian tonight?" he'd ask. "I don't care, just pick something," I'd reply, and then feel unreasonably irritated when he'd try to gauge my preference rather than simply deciding. I started comparing him to friends' husbands, the ones who commanded rooms, made unilateral decisions, embodied what I was increasingly thinking of as real masculinity. Eli noticed, of course. He noticed everything, but instead of confronting me, he tried harder, planned more elaborate date nights, attempted to be more decisive, started going to the gym more regularly, as if physical transformation might fix what I was finding lacking. The harder he tried, the more it annoyed me. It wasn't authentic. It wasn't who he was. And perversely, I resented him both for who he was and for trying to be someone else. "You're overthinking this" became my constant refrain. Just act normal. But my definition of normal was increasingly impossible for him to achieve. I wanted spontaneous but thoughtful, dominant but considerate, passionate but steady. I wanted contradictions, and I blamed him for not being able to provide them. The dinner party that changed everything was supposed to be a celebration. Eli had finally completed his professional certification after years of work, and we'd invited 4 other couples to commemorate the achievement. I'd been drinking wine since the afternoon, partly from boredom, partly from a restlessness I couldn't shake. Everything was perfect, of course. Eli had prepared a beautiful meal, timed immaculately. The table setting looked like something from a magazine. The conversation flowed pleasantly as we moved from appetizers to main course. Then Carter, Vivian's husband, started talking about his recent hunting trip. He described tracking a deer for hours, the patience and skill involved, the primal satisfaction of the successful shot. The other men leaned in, asking questions about his rifle, the terrain, the challenge. Eli listened politely, occasionally nodding, but offering nothing to the conversation. He'd never hunted, never shown any interest in it. When Carter directly asked him if he'd like to join them next season, Eli gave a non-committal response about looking into it. "He's more of an indoor cat," I heard myself saying with a laugh that sounded sharp even to my own ears. "Aren't you, honey?" A strange hush fell over the table. Eli's smile remained fixed, but something in his eyes dimmed. He excused himself to check on dessert, and conversation awkwardly resumed. Later, as Eli served his meticulously crafted tiramisu, Carter's wife Sandra mentioned they were thinking of renovating their kitchen. "You should talk to Eli," Vivian said. "He did such amazing research before their renovation. He knows everything about countertop materials." "Of course he does," I said, the wine making me reckless. He spent 3 months creating spreadsheets comparing granite and quartz. Very masculine. This time, the silence was deafening. Eli carefully set down the dessert he was serving and looked directly at me. "Claire," he said quietly, "is everything all right?" Something in his calm question ignited a fury in me. Why wasn't he angry? Why didn't he defend himself or tell me to shut up? Why was he always so damn measured? "No, everything is not all right," I said, pushing back from the table. "I'm just tired of pretending." "Pretending what?" His voice remained level, which only infuriated me more. That this is what I wanted. A husband who makes tiramisu and researches countertops and asks permission to make basic decisions. "Do you know why I married you, Eli?" Because all the real men weren't available. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The horror on our friends' faces confirmed it. Even in my wine-hazed state, I recognized the cruelty of what I'd said. Eli didn't shout, didn't throw anything, didn't storm out. He simply looked at me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression from hurt to something else, something that looked uncomfortably like clarity. "I think we should continue this conversation in private," he said to me, then turned to our guests. "I'm so sorry about this. Perhaps we should call it a night." After they'd all left with awkward hugs and concerned glances, I expected a fight. Wanted one even. Instead, Eli started cleaning up the kitchen with the same methodical care he applied to everything. "Aren't you going to say anything?" I demanded, following him around as he gathered plates. He set down the stack of dishes and turned to face me. "What would you like me to say, Claire?" "That I'm sorry for not being the real man you apparently wanted. That I'll try to be more like Carter or Sebastian or whoever embodies masculinity to you this week?" "Don't be ridiculous," I muttered. Though that was exactly what I'd been hoping for. Some promise to change, to be different, to be more. "I've spent 3 years trying to figure out what you want from me," he continued, his voice still frustratingly calm. "I've tried being more decisive, more spontaneous, more traditionally masculine. Nothing works because the problem isn't me, it's your expectations. So it's my fault you can't make a decision without conducting a research study first," I shot back. "No," he said, "but it is your fault that you married me expecting me to become someone else." He left the kitchen then, and I heard him moving around in our bedroom. When I went upstairs 20 minutes later, he was packing a suitcase. "What are you doing?" I asked, panic suddenly cutting through the alcohol fog. "Taking some space," he said. "You're leaving because of one fight, one thing I said when I was drinking." He zipped the suitcase and finally looked up at me. "This wasn't one thing, Claire. This was just the first time you said out loud what you've been showing me for months. You don't respect me. You don't value who I actually am. And I can't keep trying to be someone I'm not just to earn the respect of my own wife." I tried to backpedal then, to apologize, to blame the wine, but Eli just shook his head. "I think we both need time to figure out what we really want," he said. "Because I'm starting to believe it's not the same thing." He kissed my forehead, gentle as always, and walked out the door. I was certain he'd be back in a few days. Eli wasn't the type to make impulsive decisions or dramatic gestures. He'd calm down, we'd talk it through, life would continue. That's what he did. He fixed things, solved problems, maintained equilibrium. But days turned into a week, then 2. His texts were polite but distant, mostly about practical matters like bills or taking care of Penny. When I suggested couples counseling, he agreed readily, typical Eli, always willing to work on things. But the therapist's probing questions only made the gulf between us more apparent. "What do you value about Eli?" Dr. Lambert asked me during our second session. I gave what I thought were the right answers, his kindness, his stability, his intelligence. But even to my own ears, they sounded generic, like I was describing a good employee rather than a beloved partner. When it was Eli's turn to answer the same question about me, he spoke about my creativity, my passion for design, specific moments when I'd shown kindness or insight that had moved him. The contrast was embarrassing. He'd been seeing me, really seeing me, while I'd been looking at him and wishing for someone else. A month after the dinner party, I ran into Alex's wife Tara at the grocery store. She asked how I was doing with forced cheerfulness, and I gave an equally strained response about taking things one day at a time. Then, trying to sound casual, I asked about Eli. "Oh," she said, suddenly very interested in examining a tomato. "He's actually not staying with us anymore. He got his own place about 2 weeks ago. Small apartment downtown, near that pottery studio where he's been taking classes." "Pottery classes," I repeated, unable to hide my surprise. Eli had never shown any interest in art before. Tara nodded, looking uncomfortable. "He started going to deal with stress, I think. Turns out he's really good at it. Something about his attention to detail translating well to the form." She paused, then added gently, "He seems different. More at peace, maybe." I left the store without buying anything, driving instead to the downtown area she'd mentioned. I told myself I just wanted to see his new place, not actually confront him, but that plan evaporated when I spotted him coming out of a cafe. He did look different. He'd grown his hair slightly longer, and there was a new ease in the way he moved. He was laughing with someone, a woman with curly red hair wearing paint-splattered overalls. As I watched from my car, she said something that made him throw his head back in genuine amusement, his whole face lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in years. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. This wasn't the wounded, retreating Eli I'd expected. This was someone new, or perhaps someone who had been there all along, just not with me. The divorce papers arrived 3 months after he moved out. No-fault divorce, everything split fairly, just as I would have expected from Eli. The only sticking point was Penny. We both wanted her. In the end, we agreed to shared custody, with her spending weekdays with him since I often worked late, and weekends with me. When I picked her up from his new apartment for the first time, I was struck by how quickly he'd made it his own. The space was smaller than our house, but thoughtfully arranged, with plenty of natural light and carefully selected furnishings. One corner was dedicated to his pottery, with a small wheel and shelves displaying his creations, simple forms with complex glazes, showing a surprising artistic sensibility. "These are beautiful," I said, genuinely impressed as I examined a perfectly proportioned bowl with a midnight blue glaze that seemed to contain galaxies. "Thanks," he said. "It's been good for me, working with my hands, making something real." The implied critique wasn't lost on me. Our life together had been carefully constructed, but somehow not real, at least not to me. "How's the new project going?" he asked, changing the subject as he packed Penny's favorite toys into a bag. For a moment, I thought he was making small talk, but his expression showed genuine interest. He still remembered what I was working on, still cared about my career. The realization made my chest ache. "It's good," I said. "The client finally approved my concept. Actually," I hesitated, then continued. "I use that approach you suggested, starting with their core values instead of aesthetics. It made a difference." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, followed by a small smile. "I'm glad it helped." As I was leaving with Penny, I noticed a woman's scarf hanging by the door, soft gray with threads of silver running through it. Not mine, never mine. I recognized it as belonging to the red-haired woman I'd seen him with. "Her name is Audrey," Eli said quietly, noticing my gaze. "She teaches at the pottery studio." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "She's coming over for dinner tonight," he continued, with a directness that was new to him. "I wanted you to know from me, not from anyone else." "Is it serious?" I asked, hating how vulnerable the question made me feel. He considered this, taking the time to find the right words, a habit that had once irritated me but now seemed like simple thoughtfulness. "It's honest," he finally said. "And right now, that's what matters to me." 6 months after our separation, Vivian invited me to her son's birthday party. I almost declined. Knowing Eli would be there, he was the child's godfather after all, but pride made me accept. I wasn't going to hide from my own friends just because my marriage had failed. I spotted him immediately in Vivian's backyard, helping her husband set up the grill. The easy way they worked together, laughing and talking, made something twist inside me. Eli had always gotten along well with our friends, but there was a new confidence in his interactions now. A comfort in his own skin that hadn't been there before. And then I saw her, Audrey, setting out plates on the picnic table. Her wild red curls contained in a loose braid. She wasn't conventionally beautiful, but there was something striking about her. She moved with an artist's awareness of her body, graceful and unself-conscious. When Eli walked over to help her, I watched for the dynamic I'd grown accustomed to in our marriage. Him deferring, being careful, seeking approval. Instead, I saw two people working in natural tandem, neither leading nor following, just being together. At one point, Carter asked Eli about a local zoning issue that was making headlines. The old Eli might have given a measured, technical answer, careful not to offend anyone with a strong opinion. This Eli spoke passionately about sustainable urban development and the importance of green spaces, his hands animated, his voice carrying across the yard. When Carter disagreed with one of his points, I tensed, waiting for Eli to backtrack or soften his stance. Instead, he engaged thoughtfully with the opposing view, neither yielding his position nor becoming combative. It was a master class in confident discourse, standing firm without needing to dominate. Later, as children ran screaming through sprinklers and adults gathered in conversational clusters, I found myself standing alone by the drinks table. Audrey approached, pouring herself some lemonade. "You must be Claire," she said, her voice warm and slightly husky. "I'm Audrey." "I know," I replied, more curtly than I'd intended. If my tone bothered her, she didn't show it. "I wanted to thank you for being so gracious about the Penny situation. Eli says you've been really flexible with the schedule when he's needed to adjust things." I wasn't sure what to say to that. I hadn't been gracious out of kindness, but because I'd been too busy with work to argue about dog custody schedules. "Eli speaks very highly of you," she continued when I didn't respond. "Especially your artistic talent. I finally checked out your website. Your design work is stunning." "Thank you," I said, surprised by the genuine compliment. "Eli says you're a pottery teacher," she nodded. "And a sculptor. I have a small gallery downtown." "Is that how you met? At the pottery studio?" A smile curved her lips. "Actually, we met at a farmer's market. He was examining tomatoes with this intense concentration, like he was solving a complex equation. I asked if he was performing some kind of vegetable telepathy." She laughed at the memory. "He told me he was calculating ripeness based on color saturation and stem attachment. It was the most adorably nerdy thing I'd ever heard." The description was so perfectly Eli that I felt a pang of recognition. This was the man I'd married, precise, thoughtful, slightly quirky in his thoroughness. The man I'd grown to resent for exactly these qualities. "He's always been detail-oriented," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "It's one of the things I love most about him," Audrey said, with a warmth that felt like an accusation, though I knew she didn't intend it that way. "The way he notices everything, cares about getting things right. It's rare to find someone who pays such close attention to the world." Before I could respond, Eli joined us, casually slipping his arm around Audrey's waist. If he was uncomfortable finding us talking, he didn't show it. "Everything okay?" he asked, looking between us. "Just getting to know each other," Audrey said, leaning slightly into him. I watched Eli's face as he looked at her, the softness in his eyes, the slight curve of his mouth. It was an expression I recognized from the early days of our relationship, before disappointment and criticism had worn it away. "Vivian's looking for help with the cake," he said to her. "Something about structural integrity issues." Audrey laughed and squeezed his hand. "Duty calls. Nice meeting you, Claire." She walked away, leaving Eli and me in an awkward silence. "She seems nice," I finally offered, the words feeling insufficient. "She is," he said simply. Then, after a pause, "How are you, Claire?" "Really?" The genuine concern in his voice broke something in me. I'd prepared for coldness, for distance, even for happiness that excluded me. I hadn't prepared for kindness. I started, then shook my head. I don't know, Eli. Working a lot, thinking a lot, missing Penny on the weekdays. He nodded. She misses you too. Keeps looking for you when we come back from our walks. Another silence stretched between us, filled with all the things we weren't saying. You seem good, I finally said. Different, but good. A small, thoughtful nod. I am good. Not because we're apart. He was quick to clarify, always careful with others' feelings even now. But because I finally stopped trying to be someone I'm not. The words hit me like a revelation. How much of our marriage had been him trying to contort himself into shapes I found more acceptable? How much energy had he spent trying to anticipate and fulfill my ever-changing expectations? I'm sorry, I said, the words inadequate but necessary. For what I said that night, for a lot of things. I know, he said gently. I was angry for a while, but I'm not anymore. In a strange way, that night was a gift. It forced me to face something I'd been avoiding, that I was losing myself trying to be the person I thought you needed. I never asked you to change, I protested weakly. His smile was sad but without bitterness, not directly, but every time you compared me to other men, every time you rolled your eyes when I considered decisions carefully, every time you used just be a man as shorthand for be different from who you are. Those were askings, Claire. I couldn't argue with that. He was right, and we both knew it. For what it's worth, he continued, I don't regret our marriage. There was a lot of good in it, and I learned so much about myself, both what I want and what I don't want. Before I could respond, a child's delighted shriek cut through the air as the birthday boy opened a particularly exciting gift. Eli glanced over his shoulder. I should go help with the presents, he said. Ben gets overwhelmed with too much stimulation. Always thoughtful, always noticing, always caring. These traits that I'd mistaken for weakness were actually his greatest strengths. Go ahead, I said. And Eli? I'm glad you're happy. His smile, genuine and warm, was the final confirmation of what I'd lost, not because real men weren't available, but because I'd had a real man all along and failed to recognize his worth. A year after our divorce was finalized, I received a small package in the mail. Inside was a pottery mug, midnight blue with flecks of gold, perfectly balanced in the hand. The note accompanying it was brief. Claire, thought you might like this for your morning coffee. It's my new glaze technique, inspired by that painting in your office that I always loved. Penny and I are moving to the coast next month. Audrey got a teaching position at the arts college there, and I've been offered a consultation role with their sustainable development project. We found a house with a big yard for Penny and room for a studio. You're welcome to visit any time. Penny would love to see you, and so would we. Be well. Eli. The we wasn't lost on me, nor was the fact that he remembered a painting I'd had for years, one he'd always admired for its depth of color. I ran my fingers over the mug, feeling the slight texture of the glaze, the careful craftsmanship evident in every detail. It was beautiful in its quiet perfection, like Eli himself had always been, if only I'd had the wisdom to see it. I set the mug on my kitchen counter and looked around my empty house, thinking about the woman I'd been and the woman I was becoming. I couldn't change the past, couldn't undo the hurt I'd caused or reclaim what I'd thrown away, but I could learn from it. Somewhere along the way, I'd confused dominance with strength, volume with confidence, aggression with masculinity. I'd been so busy looking for a real man that I'd missed the genuine article standing right in front of me. A man whose strength lay in his compassion, whose confidence was quiet but unshakable, whose masculinity didn't need to announce itself to be real. Eli hadn't become a better man after our marriage ended. He'd simply stopped trying to be the man I thought I wanted and allowed himself to be the man he truly was. The man who'd always been there, waiting to be seen and valued. It wasn't Eli who had traded up for something better. It was me who had failed to recognize the treasure I already had, mistaking its quiet brilliance for ordinary stone. The mug sits on my desk now as I work, a daily reminder that strength comes in many forms, that real masculinity isn't about domination, but about integrity, and that sometimes the things we're looking for are already in our possession, if only we have the wisdom to recognize their worth.